Hello and welcome. I'm Tavaragadamu. She left Ethiopia at the tender age of 11, adopted by an American family. But she made sure to come back with a very big dream. My guest today, Abai Schulze, founded her company ZAAF and is making an impact as a globally recognized artisanal brand. A very warm welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Where did you pick that idea for handbags from?
Well, it started out with my experience coming back to Ethiopia during my high school breaks, summer breaks. I used to intern for different organizations, and I was able to do a little bit of research on different industries, and I
know that it was through one of those projects that were funded by AID, right?
Correct.
But which specific project was that?
So that was with USH. I was creating content and like marketing materials for websites of the leather industry. So at the time, it was mainly shoe companies. And then I realized there wasn't much of like high-end leather goods or any like brand names. But I knew that we were exporting a lot of raw hides to other parts of the world, to Europe and China and so forth. So for me, I think it's important to export value-added goods versus just the raw materials, because that's when it has real impact in the economy of creating jobs. And so that's kind of where it started out, the whole idea.
We were also exporting shoes and leather products then, right?
Minimum. Once there was tax on raw hides, then it was forcing tanneries to actually produce finished leather and then produce value-added goods as well.
What did you do next? Of course, you return back to the U.S., and then you have to come up with a proposal, develop it, and once you're done with whatever you had to do in the U.S., you had to fly back to Ethiopia and get started? Is that how it went?
Well, I finished my university. I studied economics and minored in fine arts. So whatever I was going to do eventually, I definitely was planning to come back to Ethiopia and create some type of impact, because some sort of like giving back aspect of it, combining my studies and my passion for the fine arts. And so that kind of how materialized into ZAAF, where I was able to be creative in terms of products design. And then economic development, that was more of a passion from working in the developing countries and emerging markets. And I worked in D.C. for a year in the developing organization, for, OPIC and Ashoka. And so that's kind of basically evolved in coming back and starting ZAAF as well.
ZAAF, that's tree, right? In Amharic.
Yes, it means tree, yes. And we named it tree because what tree represents across culture. Whether you're in Europe, U.S., Ethiopia, it has growth and prosperity, tree of life. And that's kind of our aim in the continent by creating jobs.
That was 2012, right?
2014 is when I launched the brand.
But you got back to Ethiopia when?
A year before, just doing samples. I was going back and forth, just like making connections, learning,
By then you have already established the project, right?
Not 2013. So I launched the brand in DC 2014, and then came back and a year later created my own workshop to kind of have a full value chain, create a new culture of how to produce international standards of products.
Starting where?
Well, initially I started in Charcos, and then I moved to Atlas.
But I mean in terms of products?
Oh, in terms of products, bags. A lot of traveling bags, laptop bags, iPad cases, a lot more like for working people moving around, people on the go type of clients.
Why?
I think it's a little bit easier when you start producing products that you could use and then your peers can use, because those are your initial connection, how you get a market to them.
So you were basically producing for yourself, right? I mean,
initially, yes. You have to start with what you know.
These are handmade bags, right?
Correct.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so everything is handmade. A lot of labor of love in terms of, stitching, you cutting everything by your hand. And I think there is a beauty in that especially the international market has high appreciation for it. I think it's more sustainable as well. And the goal is to also create an opportunity for these talented artisans who may not have the opportunity to connect to the international market. And I think that's mainly where ZAAF plays in.
So you have to basically design to put the design together, right?
Correct. I design it to make sure that it is appealing to the international market, and then but also still having the aesthetics of made in Ethiopia. And now we also produce in different parts of Africa with different products of jewelry and clothing. And so whenever I work with these countries, I still want to celebrate those authentic aesthetics, but just enough that you have to adjust to the design of where, people could fit a 13-inch computer versus you have to make sure it's functional.
When you do that, you're not alone in doing that, right? I mean, there are people who are supporting you, right? I mean, the artisans of the side, do you hire designers to help you with those products? Or
the design aspect of it is mainly me, unless if I'm collaborating with designers or artisans. There's opportunities like that in different parts of Africa that I work with. For Ethiopia, in terms of products, I mainly do the design. Sometimes every 6 months or so, we have a design competition among my workshop, and we do like a award show, and then we name the product after them. So there's things that for them to be creative as well.
And you pick the whatever.
It becomes part of the collection as well. So, but in terms of majority of it, I do design it in terms of to kind of make the collection cohesive and has like a unity in it.
And you have a pool of artisans, right?
Yes, I do.
They're working for you on a round-the-clock basis, right? I mean, whenever the need arises, right?
Correct.
So tell me about that.
Yes, so we have in Ethiopia a full-time team of about 16 people here, and then we have partners that whenever we have large orders that we work with. So they work with our materials, our accessories. So you have to start with good quality materials, and then they also know our standards. So we work with them whenever it becomes large production. And then I partner also with other artisans in Niger, in Rwanda, in Kenya, in Senegal, and so forth.
Let's talk about the Ethiopian artisans that you work with.
Sure.
How many of them do you have in the workshop?
Yeah, so the team is about 16 people here. Yeah, so depending on what season, but 16, 17.
Where did you hire them from?
Some of them from Lidi, some of them from word of mouth, and a lot of it is word of mouth or the leather institution.
What specific talents were you looking into as you planned hiring those artisans?
A lot of it is more of for them to have motivated spirit. They're happy to be part of like a community. And we also actually have some guards who have emerged into the artisans because they are, actively always with them during the day. They're helping them, and then they eventually, and people will train them, and they're inspired by the products, right? And so, and then they will advance themselves from being a guard to an artisan. And so we have 3 of them actually have evolved into that as the position. So for me, the goal is to always someone to be better than yesterday. So there's an opportunity for them, if they're motivated to move up, this is what ZAAF is about, is to change, evolve, and grow.
So as they evolve along that line from being guards to artisans, they know that you were straight into the international market. You're talking about this, funky...
Yeah, so they know our focus is export. So when I first came here...
Oh, not just export, because yours is more or less a niche market.
Yes, it is. It is a niche market. But they know it's for the outside market mainly. And even when I first came, that's how the business model was structured. And so they know that, and I think that's why they could be more patient with spending X amount of times on one product, on one bag, versus trying to produce as many as possible really quick, because I think that's kind of how other market works, is like per piece you get paid, and so your goal is to finish as many so you can get paid maximum. But our goal is that you have, actually more than an average of what we pay in terms of per month. And then actually we want to focus on quality, and we're trying to create a brand. We're trying to create this, niche, good quality that represents Ethiopia.
And I assume that you would be too demanding in terms of your engagements with your artisans, right? I mean, because it's a totally different story, is it not? I mean, you're not producing for local markets. Mm-hmm. You're doing what you're doing, and you have to be very specific. You have to have that attention to detail. Mm-hmm. You have to be, all these things. Yeah. I mean, was it easy for them to come aboard in terms of your vision doing this?
It's a learning curve for sure, absolutely. But that's why I kind of started my own workshop to create that culture versus outsourcing is harder to do that. And I think that helped a lot. And so
You do most in the chain in your workshop, right?
my workshop, absolutely. And a lot of that's labor-intensive detail because we use cow horn, wood, and the textile, the tilet. So there's a lot of different materials that becomes in one product. And so those things, they understand just because they've been with me for now almost, a lot of them 8 years, 7 years. So we have the same artisans. And I think they got the rhythm, as they say.
It looks like each bag, each piece of jewelry that you produce has a story of its own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it's definitely, I think something that they appreciate our shop in U.S. is that each product is unique, even though, aesthetically similar. They feel very special. They know, maximum that one person's going to have is 1,000 of that bag, possibly. But even among those 1,000, all different artists made it, and they have their own way of producing that beautiful product.
Your clientele, who are they?
Who are they? A lot of them are, people have disposable income between.
I guess they have to have disposable income because the most expensive that I have seen in your store is a Bamako bag, which is close to $700.
It is.
When is it going to be on sale?
Was it going to be? Never. The high demand. So we have a lot of our clients are in it depends what sector. In Ethiopia, there's a lot of tourists from Europe and Japan, China, and so forth. In U.S., we have African Americans that really appreciate our product with the African story that they love. And we have also the African diasporas and tourists from Europe as well that appreciates our product as well. We're in the area that's a lot of tourists that come through for conventions and so forth.
That's in Maryland, right?
Yes, National Harbor, Maryland. Mm-hmm.
So when did you open that? Was 2018, right?
2019, at the end of 2019. It'll be almost 3 years in November.
So all the products that you sell there are shipped out from Ethiopia, right?
From Ethiopia and different parts of Africa, hence why our brand, yeah.
Okay. So how easy is it for you to export those from Ethiopia?
It's actually very easy. It's not as difficult. No.
It has been easy all along?
No. It used to be a little bit challenging.
How challenging was that?
The first challenge was, I think, during the whole export process of, you have to get it manually typed. And so you go, and then they will make a mistake, and then you go the next day, they might not be there, network, there's not network, whatever. The same thing when you're going through the bank process. So basically, you can't ship a product on time for a specific collection, specific season. So that was the issue. But now things are being automated. A lot of things we can finish it through the online. And so it takes about maybe 3-4 days, and then by the time they ship it, via DHL or FedEx, so it takes literally 3 days, yeah.
So you periodically export. How often do you do that?
So we will ship maybe every 6 weeks or so. It depends, yeah.
So are you satisfied with the way you're received? I mean, you're pretty much covered by a number of publications around the world. Mm-hmm. These are high-end publications, if you will, and they have been very positive about what you do. And do you feel the same way? I mean, that you actually are sailing well?
Yeah, I mean,
It's always a challenge, right? You were a startup a few years ago.
Yeah. No, it's still there's still challenges that you have to pass through. I think as you grow, there's always new challenges, and that's how growth happens, I think. And in terms of coverage, I think it's encouraging that our product is unique. And it means the market is hungry for something more real, purposeful. People are really looking into a product that has meaning. And they love that's something that's more personable and also sustainable as well. And I think the new trend of fashion is playing to our favor.
What do they tell you when they buy your stuff?
What they tell us is that I think... one, the quality is amazing that's coming from Ethiopia. I think there is a bit of backward perception that people used to think, we're not capable of producing that. And I think challenging that and delivering that is probably one of our best success, I would say. And then two, people, they're always getting compliments, right? And so it makes people feel good. And so that's human nature. And if we can make people feel good with our beautiful products, why not? We'll keep doing it 100 times. And so, yeah, and I think, and people like that, they can see it's made by real people as well. So they want to know more about, the artisans, where the material is produced and how it's produced, and we were able to share that information and transparency.
How about those in Ethiopia?
People in Ethiopia, they love our products as well. I think it's more of, from Ethiopia side, the value of the brand has grown over time, and it has gained respect. Versus initially it was more like, it's too expensive that was the complaint. And I think once they know the value of it, the product, I think they've adapted to it.
And we have plenty of nouveau riche in town, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, who would have tons of money to spend, right?
Yeah.
So is your store in Addis Ababa a busy one?
In Addis Ababa, our main clients are tourists, and so I think after COVID, it has definitely slowed down a little bit. And also our production size wasn't as much. So, and the U.S. has picked up dramatically, so we actually don't have much here. But we are in the process of solving that problem.
How about sourcing your laser? I mean, there is a steady source,
yes,
if you will, in terms of quality and so on. Yeah.
I work with one or two tanneries, one in particular, that always deliver our products, our requests, our color options. Sometimes it can take a little bit longer than we want, but that's part of so you have to kind of gauge how long it takes and then always add a couple more weeks just in case. Your
life was not smooth, right? It was bumpy when you were younger, right? Mm-hmm. You lived in an orphanage here in Addis Ababa for a few years before an American couple adopted you.
Correct, yes. I grew up in Kidanamret orphanage.
The Catholic
It's a Catholic church, yes. And then near it there's a school, and also a church and an orphanage. And I was adopted when I was almost 11 years old by an American family. So I moved to Texas, and it's been...
The conservative southern part of America, right? And you're black, adopted by white parents.
I was really fortunate to be adopted by a very understanding, wonderful family. And it was quite big as well. We're 7 together. And so I think in that aspect has been, I'm one of the luckiest one, right? It's not always easy to emerge into a new culture, a new family. But in terms of Texas per se, yes, it was definitely unique. It's only 2,000 people where I was growing up at the time. I think the challenge for me is probably growing up the Catholic culture of, you have to be number one in class and do well, whatever, and then coming to the U.S. where I didn't speak the language and I wasn't able to compete fairly. So that was probably my biggest frustration, to be honest with you. But in terms of human interaction, was fairly smooth.
Color of your skin wasn't a problem?
It wasn't really. They obviously didn't know what to do with me initially. They don't know where they don't know where Ethiopia is, but they always was trying to teach me, I guess. We'll hold hands, we'll point different things. This is basketball, whatever, because my English was terrible. So
you feel that as you were growing up, you feel that you were given too much, right? You were given plenty, right?
Yes, absolutely. And then I think that's when you feel like, what makes me different from all the other people that are still in the orphanage at the time? And then how do I change that? How do I give back? And I think that's kind of...
How would you give back? I mean, is this one way of giving back, absolutely. The way you created this institution, which has grown really big?
Absolutely. I think that...
What else?
For me, is the coming back and creating an impact of, if it's, the 16 people that I'm hiring here and different parts of the continent, those people also inspiring other people as well. So there's a multiplier factor. So for me, I believe that gives me purpose to being here.
Abai, it was really a pleasure having you on my show. Good luck with what you're doing, and thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.